Is anybody got a question about swarming or how to prevent it or what to do if your hive swarm?
I've got another hive where I went and had a look yesterday, and the brood box was really full. And when I was inspecting the frames, you see, I struggle sometimes to identify the difference between bloody drone brood and what might be a queen cell. And I was on my own, and the brood was so full, I couldn't actually take a photo of what I was convinced was a bloody queen cell. But my challenge is not just the identification, and I know they're peanut shaped and so on, but this was on the face of the actual frame, sort of halfway up and about a third of the way in.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed that I sort of identified that as being less about a large number of queen cells, which I didn't necessarily see. It may be that the queen is, I don't know, misbehaved or something, I don't know, but it did look as though they were ready to swarm. So I'd welcome advice. One, in relation to, I don't know whether I can prevent a swarm, because Olivier and others have told me, often you can't prevent a swarm anyway, once they've decided. But the brood box looks very full. Should I put a super on top? Should I put a super on the bottom? What should I do?
So the first question there, Andy, is what sort of beehive do you have?
Just a regular Langstroth. Okay. Yeah.
So don't worry about the brood box being full. All beehives should be building up at this time of year. So lots of bees is a normal thing to find. If you find a queen cell, which it sounds like you might have, in the middle of the frame, that's generally a supersedure cell. So it means the bees are getting ready to replace the queen rather than actually swarm. Now, the weird thing is, because there's not a lot of food around at the moment, and we've seen this last year as well, often the bees will think it's the queen's fault if there's no food around. And so they think that she's no good and they replace her. I don't know why, what they're thinking, but it seems to happen, right? So it might be that your bees are deciding to supersede the queen rather than actually swarm. So I wouldn't remove that queen cell, and I wouldn't split that out into another hive. Now, if it's at the bottom of the frame or at the sides of the frame, then it's more than likely a swarm. Then there'll be more than one, right? But the only time you'll see a queen cell in the middle where it's not supersedure is sometimes with two brood boxes. It happens because they think of the bottom of the top frame as being the middle of the frame, if you know what I mean. But if you've got single brood box and you've got a queen cell in the middle of the frame, it's supersedure. Don't just leave them to it.
Leave them to it. Okay.
I might make an observation of what's happened to my hives recently. That's all right.
Go for it, Ian.
So I've got one flow hive and one just Langstroth hive, and one of them swarmed the other day. I was out and I got sent some videos, and so I rushed home by about 4 p.m. to just catch the swarm, which had gone in a tree across the road. By the time I came home, they'd actually left and found somewhere else to go, so I couldn't actually catch them. And I didn't know which hive they came out of. So I went and opened up both hives, the flow and the Langstroth, and I found the queen in the flow. And she's marked, and I was like, okay, so it wasn't that one. It might have been the other one. So I opened up the other one, and I could not find the queen. I was looking, couldn't find a queen, and found quite a few queen cells, quite a few. Like I'm talking maybe 10 or 15 queen cells.
Yeah.
So I did what I thought was the right thing to do, and I kept the strongest one. I kept the strongest two actually, and removed all the rest. That they were like kind of quite large looking, and they were capped as well. So I assumed that was the one that had swarmed because a new queen was about to come or hatch. And that one seems to be doing all right. And so with the flow hive, I split it, thinking that one was going to swarm too, because it also had lots of queen cells through it. So I split that one into a different brood box and found the queen, put her into the new brood box, and left behind again some strong queen cells. This was last week on Tuesday, and I went in today, and in the flow, I found a whole heap more queen cells. Like they'd made a whole heap more. So I left again. There was two capped ones. I left. This time I left one because it looked really strong, and I thought, okay, I'll just leave one in there.
Yeah.
But the one that I split was not doing well. The queen was looking really weak. Her wings were like damaged as well. So I thought maybe she's not even able to swarm because she can't fly properly. Like her wings were quite cut. They were like almost cut short and on the tip, and one wing was like totally deformed almost. No sign of any pest or diseases, but I thought the right thing to do would be to potentially take one of the queen cup brood frames out of the Langstroth hive that's capped, shake off all the bees and put that into this one that I'd split, so that the queen that's damaged, she's going to pass away soon potentially, and they'd have a new queen to look after. Is that the right thing to do? I wasn't.
We'll just go back to the beginning again. So the one that actually swarmed, leaving a couple of sweat queen cells behind is what I usually do.
Yeah.
Right. But it's really important to go back and just make sure they haven't sneakily made another 20 queen cells.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they do, right?
Yeah.
And then if you leave 2 queen cells behind, sometimes you'll get a swarm out of that hive because they hatch at exactly the same time. But by the way you can tell the most mature queen cell is the tip goes very, very sort of yellow or tobacco coloured.
Oh, okay.
And that's because she's chewing away at the inside of it. So the ones that are about to hatch usually have quite a yellow sort of band around the end of them. So that's the one that swarm. With the flow hive, just because the queen's got damaged wings or she might not look that great, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with her. She could be laying up a storm and not a problem, right? The hive is split out. It's not unusual to make 30 queen cells or something because they're panicking. They need to make a queen quickly. And you did the right thing by going back and pruning those back to 1 or 2. But with the one that's got a queen in it, the split, I just leave them alone. They'll work out if they need to replace her. She can lay eggs even if she's got bung wings. And if they think she needs replacing, they'll make a supersedure cell and get rid of her. So that's what I would do. I don't know if anybody else has got any other suggestions. Olivia, what do you think about that scenario? Would you leave the queen alone or would you get rid of her?
I would leave the queen alone. I would check if she's laying eggs. If she's laying eggs, that's perfect.
I couldn't find eggs. I looked really hard for eggs and couldn't find them. And some of the brood had actually died because there were a lot of dead bees outside. I'm thinking maybe it was the temperature while I was away this weekend. It got quite cold, I think, and it was raining a lot, and maybe they passed. I did the checkerboard thing with the frames, and maybe I should have actually clumped the brood together to keep them off, and that's what's made them cold, and now they've died.
Yeah. So when you do a split, it's really important to get bees of all ages in the split because the field bees will go back to the original source hive. So it's really important, especially when it's cold like it is now, not to checkerboard the split and to keep the frames together and make sure there's heaps of bees in there, like heaps, because all the old bees will go back to the beehive and you're left with only the young ones, and they need fair numbers to keep themselves warm. So that probably is the explanation for the dead.
That makes sense.
With these, they might be there. Maybe you just didn't see them. Maybe she's slowed down a bit because
it was like fine in the flow before I split her out.
Then she's probably fine.
Yeah, okay.
Unless you damaged her when you did the split, that's the only other possibility. But that would be pretty unlikely. So I reckon it's more that just give her a chance and she'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So often we tend to replace queens and things because we look at them and go, oh, she's no good. But the bees generally know what's going on and they will make those decisions for us. If they think she's no good, they'll get rid of her. Yeah, the only time that they don't seem to do that is if she becomes a drone layer, like she runs out of semen and she starts laying drones. They don't seem to notice until it's too late. But other than that, they generally know what's going on.
Yeah.
So well done. It sounds like you've done all the right things.
Thanks.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any swarm questions?
Yeah, I do. Do you think that it's necessary to requeen every, say, second year?
No, it depends. I would really requeen if your bees start to go grumpy. Other than that, there's probably no need to worry about it. Okay, but let me re-answer that. There's 2 reasons why you might want to requeen. One is if the bees are grumpy, most definitely requeen. The other reason might be, let's say your hive came from a swarm and your bees are unusually swarmy, because sometimes the swarm genetics take over and you get a hive that will make 30 and 40 queen cells. And then it might be worth considering requeening. The only problem is at the moment, it's basically you can't get queens. So no one's going to be requeening anything until they change some of the rules, because it's hard to get them right now.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can requeen as well if there is a lot of choke brood. That's also a solution to get rid of the choke brood. Sometimes just about genetics.
Yeah,
not very good queen, so you have to requeen. But yeah, otherwise that's okay. Yeah, Lance said that DPI guy recommend requeening every year in urban areas.
Is he a queen breeder?
It prevents swarming, but
yeah.
Yeah,
look, brand new queens don't necessarily prevent swarms. In fact, they can promote them. If it's a queen that you put in late in the season, the hive will come out of winter like on fire and swarm. So despite what my book says and many other books say, new queens won't necessarily stop swarming, unfortunately. And the big problem we've got at the moment is queens are really hard to get. They have been for the last couple of years. And this year, it's just nigh on impossible. Did that answer your question, Bill?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool.
Can I ask a question, Doug? You've mentioned grumpy bees might be a case for requeening. If I've got a new queen coming, will the genetics mean that if I have a grumpy swarm now, then the genetics will mean that my next queen will be grumpy, or do they calm down through the genetics as they knew her? I mean,
well, have you ever played roulette? So you're playing genetic roulette, right? So what happens is that the bee's genome is complicated, just like our genomes, and so the queen mates with a whole number of drones, and so what can happen is that the combination of the queen genetics and the drone's genetics, at this point in time, the bees can be horrible, and then she can change to another set of genetics tomorrow, and the bees will actually not be as bad. So who knows is the short answer to that question. What we've always done is that we keep hive inspection records, and we go, yes, they were grumpy. Yes, they were grumpy. Yes, they were grumpy. That's three inspections in a row. It's time to get a new queen. And that's how we manage grumpiness. But I'm always surprised by how some people put up with very, very, very defensive bees, because really defensive bees to me aren't any fun. But some people like fighting with their bees. I don't know. It just depends. Some people think that aggressive bees are better producers. So it all depends on, like everything beekeeping is your personal perspective.
Urban area, you don't want to have grumpy bees.
No.
Because of your neighbors, even if they produce a lot of honey.
Yeah. I mean, the swarm that I picked up at Vaucluse House, that swarm, normally I don't bother putting a veil on when I catch a swarm, which, by the way, no one else should do. That's foolish. But I'm lazy and I just go and catch them. And swarms generally are not defensive because they have nothing to protect. And I walked up to this swarm and shook them into a box. And it was like I had, I don't know, kicked a beehive over. They just went absolutely mental and was stinging like crazy. So, that's a swarm to look out for because as they grow, swarms tend to show their true genetics. So these girls weren't really showing their real genetics at this point. They might be absolutely hypersonic and actually have something to defend. Who knows? Well, they might be lovely. You just can't tell.
Could they be stressed, hungry, stressed, cold hungry, and they're just not happy?
Oh, look, potentially, but usually swarms doesn't matter. I've caught swarms in the rain and they've been just fine. So it's just sometimes they, whatever, who knows? Maybe I didn't smell good. I don't know.
Can you just remind me about minimizing queen cells? Can you just kind of refresh me on the key reasons to do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody has their own way of doing it. And my way of doing it is that if I open a beehive and I find there's lots of queen cells in it, if I can locate the queen, I'll split her out with some brood and a whole stack of bees. and the split can be right next to the source beehive. And then I'll go through and remove most of the queen cells and leave one or two. If there's a queen actually hatching, then I'll just leave her. If there's, just queen cells, I'll leave the two ripest queen cells, the ones with the most golden ends. And that way I'm probably minimizing or reducing the chance of getting a swarm from that hive. You never can tell, of course. That's what I do, but many people will give you different answers. Recently on Facebook, and I should know better than to comment on Facebook, but I commented on someone's post on Facebook, and quite a number of people told me that don't worry, the bees manage their own queen cells. You'll only get one swarm, they knock off the rest of the queens, which is what is written in the books, but the bees don't read the books and they do their own thing. So I don't leave a stack of queen cells behind, I just prune them off.
So the whole rationale is to reduce swarming.
Yes. So what will happen if you leave 20 queen cells behind, you might get 20 swarms, for example, and the beehive might swarm itself into nothing. The other thing when you're splitting is if you've got a split or you've caught the swarm, if your hive becomes queenless because you've destroyed too many queen cells, you can always use the newspaper method and merge them back together again, and you've got a beehive. So, it doesn't really matter if, in that circumstance, it doesn't really matter if you accidentally kill too many queen cells.
I'm just doing my first spring inspections at the moment because where I've got my bees is a bit colder. Where I've got, say, 3 hives on a location, I'm only doing a sugar shake test on one of the 3. I'm not trying to sugar shake all 3 of the hives. Can I just confirm that is the right thing to do as far as we know, according to the current rules?
As far as I know, the current rules, and someone me if I'm wrong, because I do read them regularly, but they change it at the drop of a hat. The current rules require you to actually not do a sugar shake, but to do an alcohol wash and to report the results of the alcohol wash. And you need to keep doing alcohol washes. It's something like every 16 weeks, I think, is the time frame.
Yeah, 16 weeks.
Yeah, so those are the rules at the moment, and you need to do it to all your hives. Now, what I would suggest is that if your hives are only picking up at the moment, or if you have trouble identifying the queen, you want to be really careful doing that, because you don't want to alcohol wash your queen, because that'll be the end of her. So yeah, those are the rules at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. Second question, which you told me I wasn't allowed to have, which I'm going to take anyway.
Actually, sorry, before I answer your second question, here's something else for you. If you've got a sugar shake container, like one of the ones with the mesh at the top, you can use that as an alcohol wash container. You don't need to get an extra special container. And the way you do it is you put the alcohol in your sugar wash container with the bees, screw the lid on, swish it around, and then pour the alcohol out into another container to have a look at it, and use the screen to filter out the bees.
Okay.
So, and yeah, anyway, so what was your second question, Philip?
Second question is, when I do my spring inspections, normally I try and take at least one frame out of the brood chamber, usually one of the outside ones. If it's completely empty of anything except comb, I just remove it and replace it. Put a new frame into the centre of that brood chamber. If there's brood in it, I'll just bang it up into the next the box above. Should I be trying to take out at least 2 frames, or is one sufficient?
You want to take 2, but honestly, with the way the weather is at the moment, it's probably still a bit cold to be breaking the brood nest up. So I might be delaying rotating frames out just a little bit. It's supposed to be a big cold snap coming through at the moment, which might last a week or so. And so maybe wait till that's passed before you break the brood nest and rotate your frames out.
Thank you.
Can I just come in there with the alcohol wash?
Yeah.
Comment. Having had a bit of experience with Varroa now up in the Hunter, I found that you really have to shake the bees quite vigorously to detach the Varroa mite if it's an early infestation stage. If it's Varroa everywhere, and I'm sure you'll find them. But when I saw the Varroa, I had about 400 bees in the alcohol wash, and you have to shake it for 4 minutes, which is a long time to shake. And one mite came out. Then you have to redo it, and another 2 came out. So I found 3 mites in 300 to 400 bees, and that was some vigorous shaking.
Yeah.
Just being mindful of that is like, they don't detach easily.
No, and that's why the sugar shake doesn't really work particularly well. Because the mites, I'm sure you know this, but the other people may not, but the mites are actually buried up where the neck joins the rest of the thorax, and they're trying to dislodge them out of that spot. So the alcohol will kill them, but you've got to dislodge them out, and you really have, it's like making a cocktail. You've got to shake very hard to get them to dislodge. And, you know, the reason why the sugar shake is more attractive is you're not killing the bees. But if you actually to do the sugar shake properly, you have to shake it just as hard, which does kill the bees. They just don't die immediately. So the alcohol wash is definitely the way to go. And yeah, you shake it like you're making a cocktail.
There's also another method, is a CO2, where they pass out essentially, and you shake them, and they come out, and they come back to life.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one company selling that at the moment, and it's not actually approved under the DPI rules. The only thing there is the bees are going to die as well, because you've got to shake them really hard to dislodge the Varroa, and so they're going to die. They just don't feel like they're going to die. So they'll wake up again, but you actually damage them. So they'll just die and you won't see it. So it's more about how you feel rather than actually
effectiveness.
Yeah.
I have a question. How do you know you've got 400 bees?
It's actually a cup. You use a cup measure, Gavin, believe it or not.
I'm asking for those who don't know.
So yeah, it's like half a cup of bees. It's quite remarkable.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's actually counted them, but yeah, half a cup of bees is 300.
Half a cup is about 400.
Yeah, I think it's 300, but yeah.
300, right. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, so there's quite a few videos around on how to do it for those who haven't seen it. And basically you steal a flour measure out of the kitchen and shake your frames onto a folded piece of paper and pour that into your cup measure and bake a cake, basically. I think there was a question from Antoine.
Yes, hello. Just a practical question about when do you choose to open the hive with the? I find that there's always wind or rain, or do you have a temperature that you think, oh, that's good when it's that temperature, I can safely open it and they won't be too angry, or do you have a rule like this?
Yeah, look, it's really hard, especially with the way the weather's been at the moment. The interesting thing is that many of us were doing Varroa tests in winter, and the bees weren't particularly annoyed at us. So the cold is not so much a problem; it's more wind or rain. But even in the rain, you can open a beehive up if you have to. So I'd just be looking for a day that was half decent, which I know that's no measure at all, but. If it's a day where you're happy to run around in a t-shirt, then it's probably a good day to open bees. Just make sure it's not actually raining would be my advice. They will tell you if they're not happy with you, and you can button the hive up and come back another day.
All right, but there's no temperature where you think, oh, that's too cold, I won't.
Look, not really. I mean, I was opening hives up on 12-degree days during the beginning of the Varroa and of the Varroa testing here, and I found the bees were fine. What did happen is you had to tip the bees back into the beehive because they were chilled and they couldn't get back into the hive. But, you know, it's surprising. The bees are very resilient and will cope with a cold day. Obviously, that's not ideal. So, you know, people will say 20 degrees. The bees are flying at something like 16 degrees. So, you know, around that 18-degree mark is probably warm enough to do it. But if it is an emergency, you can do it when it's much colder.
I've got a question about the need to do alcohol washes. You were indicating every 16 weeks. Are we talking about everyone in the state or everyone within the eradication and surveillance zone? Or
with about everybody. So the rules were changed recently in the last week or so, and they're now saying that everybody in the state has to alcohol wash their bees. And I think it's 16 weeks. I'd need to check. And that's the number that popped into my head. Someone else can correct me if I'm
definitely 16 weeks.
16 weeks, yeah. And so if you've only got 1 or 2 hives, then it's all your hives. If you've got large numbers of hives, then it's a formula you use on how many hives need to be alcohol washed. But they're asking everybody to do it on a regular basis. And I guess the idea is to work out if they've actually contained this thing or not.
Can I ask one question? How frequently would you suggest you inspect a hive? Just as a general thing, once a month?
Well, I mean, again, everybody will have a different answer. And the point of this is I hope other people will answer this question as well. But I, at this time of year, would be going in as often as I can, like every 2 weeks, in the hope of catching the hive swarming. But if it's outside swarming season, then every 3 weeks or so, or depending on what the season's doing. You can tell you get a trend for what's going on, and then you can make up your mind on when you should be doing it. But I mean, what do other people do at this time of year? Are we talking 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or what do they do?
Once a month.
Once a month, yeah. Gavin, how often do you reckon you should be?
About once a month, yep.
Once a month, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, once a month.
There you go. So, and that's the thing about this group, is to make sure that we get answers from everybody, because everybody has a different idea.
Yeah, okay.
And there's no wrong idea or right idea. It's just what everybody does a different thing.
But I got to a point where a season or so ago, I was inspecting every week.
Yeah.
I think I was just overdoing it. I don't think I achieved anything.
No, people get very excited about their bees and they're out there every day if they could. Every week is probably a bit too much, but conceivably, if your bees are likely to swarm, if you're doing every couple of weeks, you'll catch it. But then again, you may not, and you wasted your time. So,
Yeah, it seems to be 50-50 anyway.
Yeah.
Just remember that every time you open your hive, you're going to lose temperature from your brood and your bees. So you're chilling your hive, and they're going to take a while to bring that temperature back up. So if you overdo it, you're stressing your bees.
Yeah.
So I suggest whatever you feel like, but don't overdo it. And the other thing, of course, worrying about whether or not you should open your hive. These are European honeybees. And I was absolutely gobsmacked at the temperatures that people are opening their hives in Europe. It just scared the hell out of me. I thought, oh, they're going to kill them all. But they just work quickly, and 15 degrees. Oh yeah, that's when they fly. That's all right. But it's, in Sydney, that's a hell of a shock. Yeah. But just watch your day. For example, my mate Steve, he's opened hives at the apiary over at Cox's Creek. And the bees were really, really grumpy. And I said, well, what was the day like? It was overcast. There was rain coming. The bees really didn't want to go out that day. So they went in, and they went in quite severely around the ankles. So if you look at the weather and your temperature and sort of think about it, how would you feel like if somebody dragged you out of bed, when you're not really wanting to go outside? The bees will react the same way, I think. Just be careful.
I've got a different question, not on swarming or alcohol washes, but on pollen. I inspected the hive today, and all the bees are doing fantastically well, really happy with them. But there was a lot of pollen in the super, in the honey super. Now, can someone tell me what's happening? Why is it not there?
You have to ask your bees exactly what they've got in mind, Rob.
Well, I did, but they didn't answer.
Well, they did. Look, it's funny. Bees will, where there's a lot of pollen coming in like there is at the moment, the bees will store it because they're going to need that for brood rearing in spring. Sometimes the bees store way too much pollen and they'll store it everywhere. It's just good. At least they're not storing it in the brood chamber and clogging that up with pollen. So upstairs is a good place to put it. Who knows? It's just one of those things. Bees are funny. They do different things.
So when it comes to actually extracting that honey, I'll be extracting the pollen as well, I guess.
Well, the pollen won't come out. So unless you're crushing and straining, the pollen will stay there. So it won't really matter. You'll get a bit more pollen in your honey. If you sell your honey, you sell it at a higher price because it's got pollen in it.
Yeah, always the higher price.
Absolutely.
Doug,
yes, Lindsay.
I've been hearing there's not a lot of honey around. Do you foresee an increase in the amount or the charge for honey, in your opinion?
No, I don't think so. Historically, like overseas, well, for example, if Varroa gets here, everybody's saying the honey price is going to go up. That hasn't happened overseas. The price has actually gone down. So there is not a lot of honey around at the moment. If the weather gets better, there will be. I don't think the price is going to go up. It would be nice if it did, but I don't think it will. Of course, it comes. What you charge for your honey comes down to what people are prepared to pay for it, and so people aren't prepared to pay for much at the moment, and that's probably likely to get worse as the potential recession bites. So I think that the price of honey is going to be about where it is at the moment for a while. Well, it's been where it is at the moment for a long time, so I can't imagine it going up.
Thank you, Doug.
But hey, I'm happy to be wrong. If the price goes up, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, could I just say, please check your cells very, very carefully. I found 3 cells that were a bit sus in a Warre hive that I opened. And fortunately, I had a good group of people looking on, and I gave it a poke. And out it came, and there it was. It was American foul brood. It hasn't gone away in Sydney. It's still around. Please look really carefully at every frame when you do take them out. You've really got to be on the ball, because this was a really strong hive. I thought, no, it couldn't possibly be. And there it was, 3 cells. That was it. One was concave, and one was opened by the bees. And so I thought, just give it a poke. And sure enough, had to destroy the whole hive. So just keep your wits about you when you're observing your hives.
Yeah, there sure is a lot of AFB around. It's only getting worse too. I understand that the people doing the work up in Newcastle have found a lot of AFB up there when they were checking people's bees for Varroa. Yep. So it's people really need to keep an eye out for it. It's everywhere.
Yeah. If anybody's interested, there's a lot of interest in the schools in beekeeping.
Yeah, there is.
If you can, get in touch with your local kindergarten or your primary school or your secondary school and offer your services. I've been doing it for years, and I've got a lot of people on the books.
Yeah, that's probably that might be a good point to wrap up the meeting and move on to the committee meeting if there's no other questions anybody's got.
Okay.
No other questions? Great. Okay. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate the members turning up. We will let you know what we work out with the field days and a potential face-to-face meeting.